Iran has reportedly urged Qatar to transfer its detained pilots to a hospital on land. It also alleged that the pilots are being held on water and are in poor physical condition. Now, the commander of the Committee for the Search for Missing Persons of Iran's Armed Forces, General Staff, Brigadier General Mohammad Bagherzadeh, has requested the International Committee of the Red Cross to send an air ambulance to Qatar and expedite the return of the detained pilots back to Iran. Bagherzadeh said that the place where the captive pilots are being held on water does not provide suitable conditions for maintaining their health. In his latest statement, Bagherzadeh has also said that he welcomed Qatar's decision to receive a team of Iranian experts and called on Doha to provide them with necessary cooperation. Now, earlier this week, Qatar's foreign ministry had said that the invitation remained open for an Iranian delegation to visit over the pilots' issue. Last week, Iran demanded Qatar to release 3 of its pilots whose aircraft went down during the first couple of weeks of the West Asia war. The Iranian Armed Forces said that the 3 Iranian pilots have been captured alive by Qatari forces after the Su-24 fighter jets crashed during the war. Furthermore, in a letter to the Red Cross back in March, the commander of the Committee for the Search for Missing Persons of Iran's Armed Forces, Brigadier General Mohammad Bagherzadeh, had identified 3 of the 4 missing pilots. He added that one of the 4 pilots has been martyred and his remains have returned to Iran. Qatar, in response, had hit back at the allegations. The country's foreign ministry categorically denied the claims. They also added that they are surprised by these misleading statements. Doha also said that they have carried out their duties to the fullest while searching for the pilots. And to discuss more on this, we are now being joined by Chris Doyle, Director of the CAABU, Council for Arab-British Understanding, and the current lead spokesperson for the same center. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Now, Iran says that 3 missing pilots should now be considered prisoners in Qatar, while Doha have completely denied the holding them. According to you, why do you think Doha would deny having the pilots when Iran is outright even giving names of those pilots?
Well, it's a curious episode here, but the two sides have completely different narratives. That Iran says that there are 3 remaining Iranian pilots. Remember that this was the shooting down of an Su-24 very early on in the US-Israeli war on Iran. But Qatar denies that they have found that, any further bodies at all. They handed over 1 body. So there is a huge gap in what each side is saying about it. So Qatar doesn't believe that this is a question of access of the Red Cross at all, because it doesn't actually state that it has these pilots as detainees. Though it would seem strange to me, I think this is one of the elements of the story that's interesting, as to if Qatar did have the pilots, as to why it would deny it. I think that is strange. They would be able to use them as a negotiating card, a tactic, to be able to say that these were pilots who were, after all, involved. Apparently, they were on the verge of attacking the Al Udeid base in Qatar in hostile action against the state. Iran, on the other hand, one has to also wonder what its agenda is here. If the claim is baseless, if the Qatari version is true, is this just an example of Iran trying to escalate tensions within the Gulf with its neighbors? But actually, historically, it's had better ties with Qatar than quite a few of the other GCC states. Like it's had much worse ties with Bahrain or the United Arab Emirates. So there's elements here that really need some sort of clarification. Would the Iranians have a motivation not to be completely honest about all of this? Who knows? Maybe Iran genuinely believes that the 3 pilots are alive, even if they are not. It's not one that it's not a story here that is really decorated with lots of cold, hard facts that can support an argument.
Right, and then they have given names as well in that case. As we mentioned in the report, and you mentioned, this happened early on during the Iran this war. Even the timings is interesting at this moment. Why do you think Iran waited all these months before alleging that the pilots were captured and that they want them back now?
Well, that's another question to which we can't be sure what is the answer. Of course, just to go back, you mentioned the names. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that the Su-24 was obviously downed, and that there are pilots. The question is to whether they have, whether they are alive, whether they were found. One body had been handed over. So as to why Iran is now pushing this, perhaps the Iranians have come across intelligence that to them indicates that these pilots are being held in Qatar. They say also that they're being held in off land on water. It's conceivable, but I don't see why that would necessarily have had to be the case, why that would have been an advantage for Doha in particular. So the whole issue here is very curious indeed.
And Qatar happens to be a key mediator between Tehran and Washington, and they were waiting for Iran and Oman to get over the talks of Strait of Hormuz to get back to any kind of back-channel talks or mediation. But Iran is accusing Qatar of holding the pilots as prisoners. Doesn't it put them in a difficult position, Qatar especially, as a mediator?
Well, indeed. I mean, the successful mediator should ideally not be seen as party to the conflict, shouldn't be an active party to any war or ongoing struggle. And Qatar has attempted to pull itself out of this. It never wanted the war, like Oman, for example. So to be in this situation does, make it awkward. Maybe that is the play of the Iranian leadership to try to undermine the neutrality of the mediators. But really, in all of this, I think this would probably blow over unless there is something far more concrete in terms of evidence that the pilots are alive. And then certainly Qatar does have obligations, to those pilots, to their well-being and how they are held, to allow access to, the International Committee of the Red Cross. Then I think it's very hard to see where this goes.
Well, as of now, Qatar has opened its doors to let the Iranians come and take part in the investigation. And Iran is so far thanked. Of course, we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Doyle, and explaining all of those perspectives. Appreciate it.